What's up, Wall fans, Common Sensors podcast consumers? Have you missed us? It's been 2 weeks. A couple reasons. We warned you a little bit on that, and then that extended a little bit for other various reasons that we'll get into during the episode. But it is a little late on this fine Sunday in June. It's rainy outside. So all that being said, let's get right into the video feed for episode 107 of Common Sense Sundays with Go Tell It to the Wall. All right, Wall fans, Common Sensors podcast consumers, welcome to another very exciting edition of Common Sense Sundays with Go Tell It to the Wall, hosted by me, your absolute favorite podcast host, the one and only Sean O'Rourke. And did you miss us the past 2 weeks? I'm sure you did. I'll get into some reasoning behind that. You know, one of them, get into more excuses, I guess. I'm going to call them excuses. We've just been very busy here at Go Tell It to the Wall. Rather, I have been quite busy. So I'll give some explanation on that. But before we do, we always kick things off with our social plugs. You can keep up with us during episodes, after episodes, for episodes, whenever you so please, and you can do that in multiple locations. One of those would be facebook.com/GoTellItToTheWall. That's right, facebook.com/GoTellItToTheWall. That's our official Facebook page. You can also head on over to YouTube, youtube.com/GoTellItToTheWall. Again, youtube.com/GoTellItToTheWall. I believe I still have yet to double check this, my bad, but I believe you can just put in @Go Tell It to the Wall and it will come up. They have these, they're using the ats on the YouTube now. So either one of those are going to take you to our YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe, check out those videos. All of our video feeds go up as well as our video clips, album reviews, all that great stuff right there on YouTube. And of course, my own personal Instagram account, which is @SoCalSean, SoCalSean, @SoCalSean, right there on Instagram. Lots of great concert content, show content, not necessarily this show. That's why I tend to not say concerts, but with this being a show that we do, differentiated. It's more of the live shows that we go to, not the live podcast stuff. Some of that's on there too, but you're going to get kind of a little bit of everything, especially if you tune in for the show recaps and the album reviews and that kind of stuff. You're going to get accompanying photos for a lot of that stuff right there on Instagram, again, @SoCalSean. And then, of course, we have our official website, which is SeanO'RourkeLive.com. That's right, SeanO'RourkeLive.com. That's your one-stop shop for anything and everything pertaining to Common Sense Sundays, Go Tell It to the Wall, live content, Go Tell It to the Brewery, Mental Health Mondays, everything's on there. We got photo albums on there. We got all kinds of great stuff on there, including links to those social platforms I just mentioned. So if you remember nothing else, just remember SeanO'RourkeLive.com. Make sure you bookmark it and check back often. There is exclusive content that does not get posted to any of the other social platforms. You're also going to find on there multiple ways to support us financially if you want to do that. One of those would be Patreon. You can become a patron of Go Tell It to the Wall and support us financially on a monthly basis through Patreon, which is a fantastic website. I use fantastic loosely there. It's pretty much the best creator, musician, artist supporting website out there. And if you don't want to do that, but you want to support us financially, you can pick up some Common Sense merch through our merch website, linked directly from SeanO'RourkeLive.com. All right, we are back after 2 weeks off. 2 weeks. I warned you there would be at least a week. Well, you know what happened last weekend is I still didn't have a voice. That's right. Between punk rock bowling and the gauntlet that I'd mentioned a few times leading up to, I was about to say Labor Day, Memorial Day weekend, and I'll get into a little bit more of that, but literally none of you would have wanted to listen to me last Sunday. It was painful to talk, despite it being almost a week removed from punk rock bowling. There was a lot of stuff in between punk rock bowling and last Sunday, and I just thought it best to rest the voice, let it fully recover, and get back to it this week. Although the funny thing is now I have somehow thrown my back out. So if you're watching the video feed and I suddenly lay on the ground here on the hardwood floor in my studio, you know why. It's because my back is just, I'm getting old, man. And that's what it is. And many of you out there that have dealt with back problems, especially as you age, you can relate. I'm in that like spazzing out mode. And of course on Friday I spent like 3.5 hours driving a car from Los Angeles to San Diego in traffic, and that did not help. So forgive me, people watching the video feed, if I do in fact end up laying down on the ground here in the studio just to help with my extremely sore back. It's just, it doesn't go well with a 6-year-old at home either. They're constantly doing something. It's just, I can barely move here. I was laying on the floor this morning myself, actually. But yes, we are back, and we're going to get into all kinds of recaps and stuff throughout this episode, as well as some of the upcoming episodes. And I will say, for those of you that have been watching video feeds or that prefer to watch the video feeds, yes, last episode that aired, my hair was very blonde. It is back to purple. It looks a little blue in the lighting, though, and this also has to do with the dry weather that we were dealing with out there at Punk Rock Bowling. So, but I can assure you, it is in fact purple. It's just getting a little blue tint from the lighting here in the studio. All right. Now that we're done with that, much more on that stuff as we get through episode 107 of Common Sense Sundays on this fine, gloomy, rainy day here in Los Angeles. I don't know, and I'm not complaining. Everybody's, and I point this out to people. They say, I'm so sick of the rain, and trust me, I get it. Look, we're not getting the downpours that we were months ago where it was like, oh my God, I cannot keep up with this rain. Now it's just getting some gloomy weather. We call it June gloom here in Southern California, and people have been complaining about it. They're like, give me the sun. And those same people, when August rolls around and it's like 95 degrees, are going to be like, oh my God, it's so hot. Patience. You'll get your heat and your sun and everything else. Just enjoy the cooler weather as we're getting it here. In fact, I'm able to wear a hoodie in the studio today. That's rare for June, unless we're getting this June gloom. And more about this specific hoodie later. Shout out to Elvis, and I'll give him another shout out later. But my brand new Left Alone hoodie here. All right. Let's get into some digital trends. Oh, and I should mention, it's so late in the day on a Sunday, I have brought beer into the studio. I'm enjoying a nice Voodoo Ranger Juice Force IPA. I think we've had this on the podcast before. It's one of my favorites. I wouldn't say I'm obsessed with New Belgium, but I tend to lean toward the New Belgians lately, just because they put out so many tasty beers. And thankfully, I love Stone, but thankfully Punk Rock Bowling was not Stone sponsored, and we were able to get some different beers outside of Stone IPA and Delicious IPA, and one of them was New Belgium. I was enjoying that very, very much throughout the Punk Rock Bowling weekend. All right, like I said, digital trends. Kicking things off this week, we're going to talk about adult diapers. No, we have not been sponsored by Depends or any of those other companies. I know I am aging. I am not quite at that age, though. We're going to talk about it for a different reason. Yes, adults wearing them, but apparently the trend right now, and we're all familiar with Taylor Swift. I am not a big fan. I have nothing against her. It's just not my kind of music. I have lots of friends that really like Taylor Swift. Shout out to you, John. I know you've been following that tour very closely. But this one I don't get. These are very expensive tickets, so part of me does get it a little bit. But what's happening, and the reason I put this in digital trends, is adults and teenagers, I think, are posting photos of themselves wearing adult diapers, like Depends and that kind of stuff, before going to Taylor Swift concerts on this tour. And the reason they're doing it, you can probably put two and two together here. They don't want to miss a minute of the Taylor Swift performance of the tour that she is currently on. Part of me does get it a little bit because I have heard that she plays like I don't know how. Holy Jesus. Maybe it's because I follow a lot of aging punkers. She plays like 4 hours, I guess. So I understand that's a long time to go without using a restroom, especially if you're enjoying a couple beverages. But good Lord, is it really worth wearing an adult diaper? In fact, I talked to my buddy John, and we were joking about it because he's and he says, yeah, I get it, you don't want to miss anything, but if you're a big enough fan, you kind of know what song, like, all right, I'm going to go hit the restroom now. I do this with Interrupters myself. They always close with Kerosene, and Kerosene's a fine song, but it's much lower on their list of songs for me personally. So when this Kerosene starts, I'm like, whoosh, I'm going to go hit the bathroom before the show's over. That's the time to hit it. So, I mean, more power to you. Do your thing. Just doesn't make much sense to me. And then posting photos, that's the thing. I have no shame, but if I had to do something like this, I'm not posting photos of myself wearing an adult diaper on the social platforms. It's just not going to happen. I mean, maybe if we did get a sponsorship, that'd be different, but I'm being paid to do it. I'm not doing it out of my own volition here. All right, moving along. Garth Brooks is trending on the social platforms recently, and for good reasons. Not bad reasons, which I like to see. And this is nothing against country music, but the loudest of the country musicians tend to be very hateful and anti-LGBTQ+. Well, here we have an instance where Garth Brooks has come out and publicly said, I guess he owns a couple restaurants, specifically one in Nashville, very popular area in Nashville, Tennessee. I've never been myself. I know a lot of people that have gone. I have friends that have recorded music there. It's a great city from what I what I gather and what I've heard and what I've seen. But he has come out and publicly said that he will tolerate no hatred toward the LGBTQ community at his restaurants. And like I said, this is trending while other country musicians, I'm not going to lump all of them. I'm sure there are fine country music. Willie Nelson, for God's sake. Not to say all of them. It's just the loudest ones. It's what we deal with, like with Christianity in the United States right now. It's like, not all Christians hate gay people. It's just the ones that do are very loud about it. So you can't lump them all together. It's tough not to, but you can't. A lot of times you can't lump them all together. And then, and at the same time, I'm laughing at this one. I laughed out loud when I saw this one. Kid Rock was trending again, and he's often trending. He shoots up cases of Bud Light and all kinds of other things. It's usually him doing something stupid and hateful. Well, the reason he's trending right now, one of the reasons at least, is apparently somebody was at his bar in Nashville, or his bar restaurant, just recently, like in the past week, and noticed that they are in fact still selling Bud Light at his bar and restaurant. So he's essentially a walking sham of a human being, just trying to get clicks, trying to stay relevant, I guess, despite the fact that he never actually pulled Bud Light from his bar restaurant there in Nashville. So hypocrisy. Hypocrisy, thy name is Kid Rock. It's really amazing how this works. And I don't think we talked about it, but there was some photos trending of him at a drag show years and years ago. And it's like, okay, you change your principles just for clicks and to cater to your base, but do you really want to cater to that base? Some people do. All right, moving along here. MTG, completely unhinged again. This basically can be talked about on a weekly basis. And the funny thing is, courtesy of Twitter's whole new algorithm and stuff, I used to see screenshots. Now I just see her actual tweets. I don't know. Elon's pushing this bullshit to the top of my feed. I'm actually seeing her tweets, and she is beyond unhinged right now, and she's especially spewing false accusations regarding the Orange Menace. And we're going to get into a lot of this in a different segment of this particular episode, but I do want to point it out just in the digital trend, the trending social stuff right now, because she's not the only one. Many other people from the GOP have been doing the same. Lindsey Graham is out there spewing falsehoods and stoking hatred for no reason. And these are supposedly intelligent people, which we all know they are not. But it's so to the point where if you have any ounce of common sense, you can see that all these tweets that are coming from MTG and others are blatant falsehoods, and they do know that they are incorrect, yet they continue to spread lies. So it's not even that certain people believe these things. They know it's incorrect. They know that they are wrong, yet they are trying to rile up their base, sow hatred in this country for certain people, certain politicians, everything else, and it's just getting out of hand because it's nothing but flat out lies. And like I said, somehow I am now seeing Marge's tweets. And in fact, another thing trending on the socials right now was the Pride event that was just held a couple days ago at the White House. Apparently the biggest Pride event that's ever been held at the White House. And of course, this is causing homophobes to lose their minds on the social platforms. A couple of photos were posted of a rainbow flag hanging from the White House between a couple of American flags. So, of course, everyone starts losing their minds. How could you do this? This country's going to hell. All over a rainbow flag that is in support of a good chunk of the population of this country. And it's nothing but hypocrisy. Because here's the thing. This is the Venn diagram. The Venn diagram of people complaining about a rainbow pride flag being hung at the White House are the same people who run around with Trump American flags, drape themselves in American flags, wear American flag things, clothing, all that kind of stuff. Storm the Capitol, flying a Nazi flag. It's a solid circle of those people complaining. So not only are they blatantly wrong, but they are being blatantly hypocritical with this particular thing. And you can't have it both ways. Just because you for no reason, hate a certain group of people who have done nothing to harm you, nothing whatsoever, doesn't mean you can just have it both ways. It's not how it works in this country or any other country. But unfortunately, in the United States of America, that is going on right now. And in fact, it's not only happening in places you would expect here in the United States, but it is happening here in the Los Angeles area. In fact, last week we had some protests and even fights between parents and protesters and Proud Boys. Proud Boys out here. I don't know what the hell they're doing in Glendale, but they're in Glendale protesting a Pride event. There's a school there that was celebrating Pride Month, and they had a Pride event to celebrate diversity and the LGBTQ community because June is Pride Month. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But they're clashing protests, including Proud Boys, who really, we're not talking about parents of kids at school. These are Proud Boys that rolled into Glendale looking to start fights and cause problems. And in fact, I saw a couple of signs that were like defund LAUSD, which is Los Angeles Unified School District. And many people pointed out that if you were a parent in Glendale of a student in Glendale, you would know that Glendale has its own school district. They are not actually part of Los Angeles Unified School District. All of the blatant hypocrisy, the fake outrage over something that does not affect them in any way possible. Oh boy, now I put my phone on silent and it goes straight to, there we go. Okay. Still, alarms go off on my phone, and even though it's on silent, alarms just come out of the silent part. I was going to say alarms trump the silence on the phone. I don't like using that word so much anymore. And the craziest thing about this whole Glendale, these protests in Glendale, the school's actually been doing it since 2019. So we are looking at literal selective outrage because that hatred has been stoked by people in high positions in this country for the past few years. We need to do better. Everybody can do better. Use your intelligence and don't be a hypocritical asshole. It's simple as that. All right. Another thing trending on the digital platforms over the past week or so is the new Apple headset. I can't even remember what the hell it's called, but it was really cracking me up. And in fact, my wife was watching part of it. She knows people that are extreme Apple users. We don't really use Apple, and it's fine if you want to use Apple stuff. But this headset was just getting ripped to shreds on the social platforms. Not only because they're positioning it as this, it's the most innovative thing to ever come out of technology, and it's like it's a fucking VR headset. Maybe you tweaked it a little, but this has been around for a while. And in fact, most of those VR headsets are now failing from a business standpoint because they're not profitable enough. Companies are dropping their divisions that are doing VR stuff. But of course, Apple is going to pretend that they invented it and they came up with the idea, and they're going to present it as they are the most innovative company on the face of the earth. And that's fine. If you're into Apple, that's fine. But it was very amusing to see it get ripped to shreds on the social platforms. And the one that really got me was the price tag. The thing costs $3,500. We are not talking about a computer here. We are talking about a computer accessory. You still need a computer. This is not a computer you put on your face. It still needs to be attached to another piece of technology, and you have to pay $3,500 for it. I will be interested to see how many people actually buy this thing. I'm sure because it's Apple, people will clamor to it, and the people that love Apple will get on board with it. But honestly, it's all just silly to me. It really is. And one of the memes that came out of it that I love, and especially for someone of my generation who grew up in the 80s and 90s, we were constantly told, don't sit so close to the television. That's bad for your eyes. And now we just put a fucking television on our face. What happened here? Where are we going as a technological society? All right, let's move along to some mental health here. I don't have a lot this week because we're going to be really heavy on the entertainment news, as well as the positive news, which is going to then lead into more ranting from yours truly. But I want to talk about something that's been top of mind for me lately, and that's differences in kind of how we cope with mental health problems and mental illness. Because I've always said it varies from person to person. No two people are exactly the same when it comes to their mental health treatment, and that's their mental illness treatments. And that's what we talk about often when we talk about getting treatment and doctors and not getting frustrated, because it is a journey to find what works best for you. And one of those things that's been top of mind for me lately is some people need to shut off. A lot of times people with mental illness, especially ones like mine, obsessive compulsive disorder, where you have intrusive thoughts, need to shut off their brain with quiet. And I completely get that. However, there are some people that need extra stimulation in order to keep their brain occupied and avoid those intrusive thoughts. I fall into the latter category by far. In fact, I'm always doing something. It's very rare that you will see. I mean, once in a while I will zone out on a television show, but often I have a TV on and I am doing some editing, work, whatever it might be. music. In fact, I will be sitting on the couch watching TV, listening to music, editing photos, all at the same time. And that is what's comforting to me. And it differs from person to person, just like I said. And this was very confusing to my wife. Now she's used to it. She has since gotten used to it. But for a few years, she'd come out and be like, what the hell? You know, she'd be in the other room or something, come out, and I've got 5 things going at once. And it's like, what the hell are you doing? Now she comes out and she's just like, oh, okay. I'm going to change the TV because you're only half watching. I'm going to change the channel. So for me, stimulation keeps those intrusive thoughts out, like I said. But it does make sleeping difficult because when I try to turn off all of these distractions and lay my head down, that's when it becomes difficult. And this is why I often read before bed. I often listen to music as I go to sleep. Whatever extra stimulation is going to keep my brain calm so that I can actually rest my brain and the rest of my body. Now, again, I bring this up because it's finding what works for you. I fully understand somebody that just needs quiet. You know, we have, what are these deprivation chambers where you sit in there and it's just completely dark. You don't see anything. You don't hear anything. It's completely silent. That sounds like hell to me, but I do understand how that could be beneficial to certain people. And that's why we talk about these things. So it's not only finding your own path if you deal with mental illness and mental health problems, but it's understanding that in other people. So you can't just follow someone else's plan. Every person's plan, treatment is going to be completely individual, no matter what you do. And make sure you do not criticize others' methods as long as they are not things along the lines of self-harm, and stuff like that. And that brings me kind of to my final point, is make sure you're also not overly self-medicating. For those of you that don't know about self-medicating, this is why a lot of people turn to alcohol or drugs. Obviously it's not the only reason, but to turn their brains off. And I'm not going to sit here and say it's horrible or okay, but there is a line. If you drink to self-medicate a little bit, that could be very detrimental down the line. So find that balance of what treatment is right for you and not overly self-medicating and not comparing yourself to others and how they cope with certain aspects of their own mental illness. This is very important. It's like I always say, it's not the same for everybody. And that's why I say, always reach out to me and I will help in any way I can, but I am in no way an expert. Nobody's going to be exactly the same as me. I can give you advice based on my experiences, and that's it. Everything I do, I might talk to someone and none of it works for them because it's all based on the individual. So keep that in mind. And if you see somebody that just needs constant stimulation, there's oftentimes a good reason for that, And at the same time, I do need constant stimulation, but I also have all kinds of other issues. If somebody's slurping soup right next, I have to leave the room. Chomping real loud, I got to leave the room. I also have tinnitus. So certain frequencies hit me, I got to leave the room. I do get overwhelmed. It's not that doesn't exist. So it's not a catch-all thing. It's just I happen to be of the age that I've dealt with it for a long time and obviously still have panic attacks and anxiety attacks and heightened anxiety and claustrophobia and things like that. But I've learned through my own experience how to deal with those things. And it's all about finding what works for you. And if you're trying to help someone else, understand that maybe you don't deal with it, but you're trying to help someone who's struggling at any given time. Know that you're not going to have all the answers for them. And things may seem ridiculous to you, but are working for somebody else. So keep that in mind. And as always, if you just need to be pointed in the right direction, I'm here to give advice. Just message me through the website or through the Facebook page, facebook.com/go-tell-it-to-the-wall. And again, I'm not an expert. I'm not a doctor. I simply speak based on my own experiences and, of course, speaking with other people that I know personally who have dealt with struggles with mental illness and mental health problems. All right, let's talk about some positive news. I do really love this Voodoo Ranger Juice Force IPA. It's very strong. Be warned. I want to say this is like a 9.5er. So that's kind of like a 1 and then switch to a much lighter beer if you're going to have more than one beer. But it is the right balance, a hazy. It's called like the Juice Force IPA, but it is right at the border of too juicy for me. So I often talk to bartenders about this because I'll go and ask like, how juicy is it? And we've hit a point when you go to craft breweries and even just regular bars that the bartenders know these beers and they're like, no, that if if you don't like super juice, don't touch that one, or here, try it. And I had one the other day, and I was like, okay, no, that tastes like you mixed orange juice and beer, and this is right on the line of that and still very tasty. All right, positive news. The Trump federal indictment. This came down, news of this last week, and actually the Orange Menace himself broke it. And then we got confirmation from the courts that he will be presenting himself in court in Florida on Tuesday of this week. And the reason I put this in positive news, we keep hearing these things. We've heard these things ever since the asshole was elected to the presidency. But this one actually feels like something is going to come of it. And if you haven't been following it at all, I would just encourage you to read up on it a little bit. And as much as social media, especially Twitter, can be a hellscape, there's been a lot of people going on Twitter, allies of the Orange Menace, and pointing out that, yes, he is in fact in trouble. And in fact, I saw an article today where it sounds like the turtle himself, Mitch McConnell, is even wanting to move past the Orange Menace and onto another candidate for the Republican Party. And a lot of those people are saying, like I said, that it's truly damning. People like Bill Barr, for God's sake, he came out and said if half of this is true, he's in serious trouble. And I've always said I'm not holding my breath, but there's so much more coming out of this one. And a lot of the GOP are losing their minds. I talked about that in digital trends there, where we have Marge going crazy and Lindsey Graham going crazy and what's his name down there in Texas? I can't even remember that stupid governor's name. He's an asshole. And then you got DeSantis is, of course, on the other side now because he wants to run against Trump. And then the other idiot, the senator down there. Oh, my gosh. My brain's not fully back here, but y'all know who I'm talking about when it comes to the governor and that senator down there in Texas, Ted Cruz. He's coming out and just, it's a witch hunt and all this other stuff. Here's the thing. This is what I alluded to by stuff Marge was tweeting and others are tweeting, and they're saying it's a witch hunt, and it's Biden and the Department of Justice are going after a political rival and blah, 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 blah. They know they're lying. Here's facts, and I am not a legal expert. I took one law class in film school, and it was called entertainment law. I learned really legal stuff pertaining to film sets and television shows and that kind of stuff, and Jackie Coogan laws and all that junk. So I'm not a law expert by any means. However, this one's simple. And this is how you know people are just going after dumb constituents to vote for them who don't realize that these are just blatant lies. The Department of Justice didn't charge the Orange Menace. Biden didn't bring charges against the Orange Menace. A grand jury saw the evidence and decided that it was enough evidence to bring federal charges against Trump. And for those of you not familiar with a grand jury, it is literally a jury. They call people in for jury duty. They get put on a jury panel for a grand jury, and they decide if it's worth sending out an indictment to whatever. This happens often, not just with politicians. It is a grand jury. And the other thing is, this is a grand jury in Florida, a state that Trump has handily carried both times he was up for the presidential election. Again, these blatant lies, and they know they're lying. They do. There's no excuse for this. I often look at people like Marge or Bobo out there in Colorado, and it's like, maybe they are that dumb. No. Some of these people, the governor of Texas has a law degree. He understands how the legal system works, yet he is stoking hatred and falsehoods against Biden and the Department of Justice. All to get votes, all to rile up a base, all to appeal to the Orange Menace. We can do better than this. But from a positive standpoint, keep that popcorn ready, because this one finally feels like it's going to be something. I don't want to jinx it, but maybe this son of a bitch is actually going to face some consequences for all the bullshit he's put us through for the past 6-7 years or so, or really even before the 2016 election. It's utterly ridiculous. That's the other. I have to stop myself from reading stuff on social platforms because groomers. The Orange Menace said he likes to grab women by the pussy. Who is the groomer here? Explain it to me, like I am 5. All right, let's move on to some parenting here. Okay, depending where you live in the U.S. or around the world, might be summertime for you when it comes to your kids. It is officially summer here in most of the Los Angeles Unified School District. I did learn that a couple of schools, and I think it was just scheduling with my kid's school, do have school tomorrow. One more day of school on a Monday. My kid is officially done. Friday was her last day, and they held a different words for it, a culmination, a graduation, a commencement for all of the kindergartners at my daughter's school. And she did a great job. They put together a nice little performance. We all got to go to the school at 9 o'clock in the morning. I'm usually barely functional at that time, but I did have some coffee, so I was waking myself up for a 9 a.m. performance and was very proud to see not only my daughter, but all of her classmates enjoy the ceremony, be able to put together a nice performance, and have very many proud parents out there in the auditorium seeing this. And they did a great job. I've been very happy with my kid was in pre-kindergarten and kindergarten. I've been very happy with the school the past 2 years. I keep myself very involved with the school on many levels, and it was yet another year that I can look back and say, you know what, they did a great job. My kid enjoyed her time. She had a great report card. Yes, kindergartners get report cards. They get testing and everything, but she has been learning as well as socializing and lots of great stuff, courtesy of her school and the people that are involved with her school. Now the issue comes to keeping her entertained because lots of stuff is done for the summer. In fact, she had her last volleyball clinic. Not volleyball. No, she had that too. She had her last tennis class and her last volleyball clinic last week. She had her last dance class last week. Now, she will be back. We have summer basketball, so that's going to kind of replace the volleyball, and I think they're doing some summer tennis, so I might be able to get her in that, but it's the challenge of keeping them entertained for the summer, and there's no dance classes for the summer, and Girl Scouts, in fact, kind of takes the summer off. They have Girl Scout camp, and, she has a lot of friends and stuff, but you got to replace that with other things. And I want to talk about her recital today, because she does take dance class, and we did this last year, and it's one of the greatest things that you can see as a parent is your kid up on a stage performing, smiling, having a great time, being with their friends, and it's always fun, not only for the parents but the kids. They are just having an absolute blast, and I'm sitting there for an hour and a half watching other cute kids do their thing, and everyone in the audience is having fun, talking to other parents, all this kind of stuff. And it reminded me today as I'm doing this how important it is to get your kids involved in things like this, whether it's sports, artistic stuff, Girl Scouts, anything, because they are going to get so much fulfillment out of it. And honestly, so do you as parents. And I've been of the belief, my child is 6. I've been of the belief for the past few years, since she was old enough to kind of try getting into things, try it all. Just because your kid is playing soccer or volleyball or basketball doesn't mean they're going to play that as a teenager. Let them just have fun. Put them in dance class, try it out. Have them try to learn an instrument. Don't be like a tiger mom, as they would say, and, constant schedule with it, but let them try everything. See what suits them. Because it's good, even as adults, to have activities and clubs and friend circles and everything else, and they create lifelong friendships out of groups like Girl Scouts, dance academies, and stuff like that, recitals and sports and whatever it might be. And after a few years, you learn what your kid is super into, and maybe you're not pushing the sports as much, you're not pushing the arts as much, or musical instruments, whatever it might be. But if they're of a certain age, at a young age, just kind of, there's that saying, throw it against the wall and see what sticks. And that's kind of like, you don't really want to do that with most things. But when it comes to a young kid, just don't throw your kid at the wall. For God's sake, don't throw your kid at the wall. But just throw them into a bunch of activities, see what they enjoy the most. And, that's what you can continue on with, because it's important, just as people in general, as a society, to socialize, to be around other people, to do things that bring us joy, even if it's not leading to something in the future. So many kids, I see it, kids my daughter's age, and they're like, they're going to go into the NFL, or they're going to be in the professional blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, calm down. Look at the statistics. Maybe they will, but don't push it too hard. Let kids be kids. Have that balance. But definitely keep them in activities and keep them doing stuff. And in fact, one more thing on parenting here. Highly, highly recommend this one. The reason I was driving for 3.5 hours down to San Diego on Friday is had a super quick turnaround because, as I said, we had a recital today. And this is partly because of my wife. She works in the industry. So she had an event at Sesame Place down there in San Diego. And when I say San Diego, for those of you familiar, I didn't know where it was. And it was like Thursday night. And she's like my wife's looking on the map and she goes, oh, yeah, no, it's in Chula Vista. And I went, oh, it's in Chula Vista. And Chula Vista is a great area. The thing is, my parents don't live near Chula Vista. And for those of you not familiar with San Diego, that is the last city before you get to Mexico. So that is the furthest, you say you're going to San Diego, and San Diego, the city of San Diego, is not much further, but it's further north than that. And we're talking close to an hour drive from my parents who live in North County, San Diego. So I don't know that you necessarily want to travel out for this one, but Sesame Place down there in San Diego in Chula Vista, it is a Sesame Street themed theme park, of course, as you can tell from the name. Lots of characters and scenery. My kid not only had a blast, but I had a blast. I'm walking through and my daughter and I are walking through part of the park, and I look up, I was like, oh my God, it's Cookie Monster. And it's a walk around character for those of you not familiar. Like, those are the characters that walk around. So it's a larger size Cookie Monster. And we kept running into characters, accounts running around, Oscars running around. They had a whole show. They had a dance party. Big Bird came out and read a book with everybody. They had a couple rides. And like I said, highly, highly recommend it if you're in the area. I don't know if this is like Disney World or Disneyland where you travel in specifically to go there because, half a day and you've kind of done everything. But what I will say is it's probably, we were having this June gloom, like I said at the top of the episode. Had a little bit of rain on Saturday as we're heading down there. It was not cold, but chilly. And half of the thing is a water park. So this is definitely something you want to try and hit when warmer weather is going on, because like I said, half a day and you've seen everything and you've kind of done all the activities and stuff, but they also have water park stuff and cabanas and everything, and of course I couldn't. They have beer and wine and margaritas. Of course I couldn't pass up the opportunity to drink a beer on Sesame Street. So I will be posting some photos. There's a great photo of me holding a beer right under the Sesame Street sign, and it's like enjoying a beer at Sesame Street. But definitely check that one out for the summer. I think they have great deals. And for those of you familiar with San Diego and the Chula Vista area, and it's funny because as soon as my wife said, oh, it's Chula Vista, I went, oh my gosh, that's it. I guarantee it's the place that was years and years ago when I was in the 90s, late 90s, was a Not Soak City location. And it's right across, like not even a big street, a little street right across the street from North Island Credit Union Amphitheater. When I was in the late 90s, it was called Coors Amphitheater. I saw at least one Warped Tour there and a couple shows there. So for those of you familiar with the area, that's where it is. Highly recommend it if you're in the area. Your kids will love it. You will love it if you are a Sesame Street fan and a Muppet fan, as you know I am. So I had a blast. She had a blast. My wife had a lot of fun. Also got some work stuff done because she does work in that themed entertainment industry. All right, let's move along to some common sense. Good news is I am not laying on the floor yet. I know I said I might end up. Actually, my back's feeling a little better. That's all it took. I just needed to come in here and rant at a wall a little bit. It makes my back feel a little better. I'll credit the New Belgium Voodoo Ranger Juice Force IPA as well. Don't self-medicate, kids. It's making my back feel better. In all honesty, it's probably partly the ibuprofen that I took before coming into the studio. And that is the one thing that killed me at the recital. In a very good-sized theater. At this magnet arts school or whatever, not far from where we live and where her dance studio is. But of course, I'm sitting in these like wooden chairs, worse than stadium chairs, and I kept sitting next to my wife, and I kept having to like lean forward for a minute. I'm like, oh my, I'm doing like stretches in the chair there, just trying to loosen up my back. But it is feeling a little bit better right now. We're actually going to get through the episode without me having to lay on the hardwood floor here in the studio. All right, common sense, Pride Month. June is Pride Month. This is our first episode of June because we took 2 weeks off. I'm laughing because we shouldn't have taken 2 weeks off, but for God's sake, no one wanted to listen to me last Sunday. The voice was not there. It just wasn't. But it is Pride Month, and the reason I bring this up in common sense, and we're going to talk about it the next couple episodes throughout June, is what drives me the most nuts about it is hateful people. We've been talking about Target and all these other things. And I think I've mentioned this before, how we have degraded as a society. There was a time, even in the 90s, where somebody could wear drag and it wasn't a big deal. Now, you have a bunch of assholes out there. They see someone in drag or they see someone with a pride flag just trying to be themselves, not affecting anybody else. And they call them groomers. I'm getting so tired of hateful people. And then there's the other people who say, when is straight month? Straight month? It's the other 11 months of the fucking year. And really, it's most of June, depending on where you live. See, I get a lot of pride celebrations because I live in Southern California, where we are very accepting of people. But obviously, not everywhere. I told you what was going on in Glendale there. But I'm sure there's other parts of the country where you can't have any kind of pride celebration. Florida, for God's sake. And you can't tell me there's no LGBTQ people in Florida, but now it's nearly impossible to just be yourself in Florida. And I don't understand why people are so offended by flags. And again, we talked about that Venn diagram. What is so offensive about a pride flag, a rainbow flag? Nothing. What's offensive is a Nazi flag. That's offensive. In my opinion, a Trump flag is offensive just because that guy's a fucking idiot. It doesn't affect you. That's the important thing I want to talk about. For everyone out there that's saying, we're straight month and you have rainbow clothing in Target and all this other bullshit. I'm going to stop drinking Bud Light. Everybody's so woke. Nobody can define what woke is, but everybody's so woke and they're groomers. Just envision some cartoon character like kicking dirt. I don't know which cartoon. I'm sure there's one. Comic character. It's like at the top of my head. I don't know. Bridget will text me later or tomorrow and be like, oh, is that one that you're thinking of? And I'll mention it next time. But it doesn't affect you. Shut your fucking mouth. Nobody is hurting anybody. And then there's always this saying, oh, you're just trying to shove it down our throat. No, nobody's doing that. We are talking about a marginalized group of people. A large marginalized group of people who have support out there from straight people, other communities that are not LGBTQ, but then hatred from so many other communities of people, including Florida. And we're going to talk about Florida in a few minutes here. But before we get to that, I want to talk about Brittany Griner, the WNBA basketball player, who we all know about the Russia stuff. But the reason I want to bring this up in common sense is she was apparently harassed in an airport. You guessed it, Wall fans. Yes, it was a Texas airport. Apparently there's some provocateur guy who, it's like, he's got a podcast or whatever, and his whole thing is literally going around and harassing people. And I don't even know his fucking name. I don't care. We're not going to give his name airtime here. But it's these shock personalities, and that's what he does, is he goes around and yells at people. And he came out, I just was saying hi to Brittany. No, he was harassing her in an airport when he shouldn't be. You know, we learn as kids, keep your hands to yourself, keep your words to yourself. Just because you hate things doesn't mean you need to go harass people about it. And it got me thinking about these shock personalities. What we have to do is stop empowering these shock personalities. We've been doing this podcast for almost 7 years. It has grown. You know, we do 15 to 20,000 individual listens per episode. And sometimes that's more, sometimes it's a little less. But we're not the most popular podcasts out there. But what happens is these shock personalities, they lean on this. They fall back on it, and that's what they do to become popular. But most times it is hateful stuff or terrible pranks and all that. I don't want to get into that, but I want to talk about the hateful side. All these idiots are taking the easy route, and they're leaning on hatefulness to make them popular. And then, of course, they become popular. Because suddenly some asshole that's listening to it says, yeah, we should harass people. Yeah, gay people are groomers. No drag shows. It's easy to do that. But common sense says we don't. And common sense says we don't lift those people up. That's why I'm not even mentioning his name. I just want to come to the defense of Brittany Griner, who should not be harassed while traveling for her job. And before any of you assholes that hate listen to this podcast, to Go Tell It to the Wall, I would like to remind you that about 5 years ago, I had to defend Ivanka Trump because her and her kids were being harassed on an airplane. So don't come at me with this double standard shit. Nobody should be harassed. Stop with the shock and the hate. It's so tired, it's so old, and it's fucking useless. Speaking of fucking useless, let's talk about Florida for a sec. Their anti-immigration and their anti-drag laws going on right now. Well, their agriculture is failing down there in Florida. In fact, people are pleading with Ron DeSantis to stop the anti-immigration vitriol that he has been spewing because, of course, agriculture throughout this country is heavily supported by immigrants, immigrant workers. And because of that, Florida is actually struggling right now because they cannot get produce out. They can't get it in stores. They can't get anything done. And that is single-handedly due to these laws that have been enacted. And rightfully so, certain immigrant workers are saying it's not worth me going out and being arrested and deported. So good on them for not doing it and taking care of themselves and making a point by making it difficult. And while I do realize that I have friends in Florida that are not hateful supporters of DeSantis, so I do feel for them, but good on these workers for sending a message. And then, of course, the anti-drag laws. The drag laws are being used everywhere. In fact, we have seen with I believe it was like a comic convention or a pop culture convention, and the convention had to come out and say, if you're going to, and if you're not familiar with Comic-Con and stuff, a lot of people dress up. It's called cosplay. They dress up in costumes of their favorite characters. This particular convention, whichever one it was, I think it was happening in Orlando, had to come out and say, if you are going to come and dress up, make sure you are not dressing as a different gender than what your gender is. This is what's happening. It's not just drag shows. It is literally anybody who's putting on a dress or putting on, a tuxedo, if, whatever it might be. If that can be construed as drag, you could get in trouble. And I've talked to many friends. I have a few trans friends, many LGBTQ plus friends, as well as a few trans friends who have blatantly said, we will not go to Florida anymore, which is myself. I have non-LGBTQ plus friends who have said, I am not going to Florida anymore. I will not go to Florida. I refuse. You got me there once. My wife's grandmother turned 100, and that's the last time. I'm not going back. Maybe years and years from now, I'll go see Disney World again for the first time in, 30 plus years, but I'm not setting foot in Florida. I'm not giving them a dime of my money. And I encourage these conventions, these festivals, all of this stuff, don't do it in Florida. Don't hold these things in Florida. In fact, the Fest, which is a very big punk and ska music festival, they are moving forward with their festival. I believe it's in October. And they have said, we are going to protect you as much as we can. There's only so much that you can do. And many people are not going to go to this fest. And I understand that you hold it in Florida. But we have to move past these things. And a point needs to be made until Florida changes these laws. And that's where we're at with that. And in fact, speaking of Florida, we had some protesters out there at Disney World because they like to protest Disney down there in Florida all the time. They're standing outside the entrance of Disney World. These people, probably a lot of Proud Boys and bullshit out there. They were out there with DeSantis flags, DeSantis 2024 flags, as well as flying Nazi flags with the red with the white and then swastika on them, blatant Nazi flags. You can't say, because I get it, people, in yoga, there's a similar looking symbol to the swastika. No. These are Nazi flags. This is what you saw. You look at footage from World War II. These are the flags that were hanging. They're flying these flags alongside, like I said, Ron DeSantis flags. It's just out in the open now. We've known white supremacy never went completely away, but now they just own it. A lot of times they would try to hide it. Now they just own it, and they fly it right alongside DeSantis flags. And you know what gets me the most about this is that son of a bitch governor down there in Florida has seen this. And what is it? Silence. So even he is just completely owning that his base is full of a bunch of white supremacists, hateful Nazis. Because if he wasn't okay with it, he would come out and denounce it and say, I understand this was happening and some of my flags were there, but we do not support Nazis. Has he done that? No. This is the world we live in now. And it's utterly disgusting. Silence about these protesters. There's no excuse for Nazis. There's no excuse for Nazism. There's no excuse for Nazi flags anywhere in the entire world. It's crazy to me that Germany, where Nazis came from, that's where Adolf Hitler took power, They do a better job of squashing Nazism than we do here in the United States of America. And guess what? We fucking fought Germany in World War II to end the Nazis. And now these assholes in places like Florida, and even, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like there aren't any in California too. I drove through Santee over the weekend. I had to inform my wife that we get through there as quickly as possible because there is still an active Klan in Santee. So it's not just Florida, it's everywhere. But we cannot let this continue to happen. And politicians won't denounce it because they just want votes. And a lot of times, they are in fact hateful people themselves. All right, I think I'm done ranting for a minute. Let's get into some entertainment news, and then we're going to wrap up episode 107. Just going to kind of riff here on entertainment news. Like I mentioned at the top of the episode, I finished The Gauntlet. We talked about it for a couple of episodes leading up to Memorial Day. It was essentially 9 days of shows and madness, starting with Punk Rock Bowling there in Vegas and culminating with Interrupters at the House of Blues in Anaheim 8 or 9 days later. The crazy thing is, driving home from Vegas on Tuesday, and my wife calls me and she goes, "Oh, I got tickets to this show tonight." I wasn't going to. It was a play or a musical. One of those. It was the Henry the Sixth, the Henry VIII Wives one. I'm going, well, I'm kind of useless right now because I haven't slept much and my voice is gone. But yes, go do that. I will take care of the house. And then the other one day that I didn't have a huge show to go to, she had a work event. So it was just this. I was exhausted. But fulfilled. And just an FYI to all of you Wall fans, in the middle of all of that, right before the Gauntlet officially started, I actually picked up a new gig. So I often talk about how busy I am between editing photos, prep, cutting stuff for the podcast, raising a child, among other things, live events. Now I have decided to get involved with a design agency and help them out with their project management as well as their social posts and that kind of stuff. Luckily, only a few hours a week, but I am a glutton for punishment, and I have decided to add more to my docket as far as stuff that keeps me busy. It's going back to that mental health segment. I just need it all. Yep, give it to me. Send it my way. Here you go. No problem. I'll sleep someday. And what we're going to do is I'm going to separate the Punk Rock Bowling recaps. We're probably going to do it over like 3 or 4 episodes. So I'm going to get into a little bit of day 1 of Punk Rock Bowling, which luckily, because we're running out of time, it was a lighter day of Punk Rock Bowling, but we'll talk a little bit about it. But before we get there, a new Rancid album came out, what was it, the June 2nd or whatever? Not this past Friday, but the Friday before. Tomorrow Never Comes, full of great tracks. It has early Rancid vibes as well as 2000 vibes. For those of you familiar with Rancid, they have 2 self-titles. So we call the one that came out in 2000, we call that one 2000. The first album is the Rancid self-titled. And they even played 2 of the new songs at Punk Rock Bowling. I will get into more of the Rancid side of Punk Rock Bowling recap because that was Sunday. We're going to talk about Friday. But I did want to point that one out. I'm not going to get in-depth because it's Rancid. They don't need any extra album reviews and that kind of stuff. Go listen to it. You know what Rancid is. The album's fantastic. I highly recommend it. And myself being a very big Rancid fan did, of course, pick that up, downloaded the digital version the day it came out, and I have been listening to it for the past week and change since it came out. As well, another new album that came out. This one came out this past Friday, the June 9th, and that's Amy Gabba. She has a new album out now. I am going to do an in-depth dive and review of this album on the next episode, and I will say I finally had the privilege. We have interacted on social platforms, but Amy's actually from Canada, and she's not only from Canada, but she's from like Toronto, Canada, so it's Canada, different country, and then the other side of the country, that would be north of like the East Coast as opposed to the West Coast. You know, I'm terrible with geography, but it's over there. It's very far from where I am. Finally had the privilege of meeting Amy in person at Punk Rock Bowling. She's awesome. She's a fantastic musician, has other music out as well that was out before this new album. And this new album is a couple years in the making, has some great cameos on it. I'm not going to get into a full review of it. We'll do that next episode. But she's also one of the nicest people you'll meet. She actually hooked me up with a T-shirt and the album on CD before it even came out, because this was 2 weeks ago that I actually got it, and cannot recommend Amy's music enough. And again, we'll get into a full review of the album on the next episode. All right, Girls Like Us. Girls Like Us, GRRRLS. We have talked about them. In fact, we've talked about them a bunch of time. And there's a sticker on the wall. It's hard to see, but it's right between the Neff and the 805 sticker there. Just a heads up, they have had a name change. They are now called Sick Rad Scene. So Kanan and Raven, I'm going to need a new sticker for the wall. I'm not taking down the Girls Like Us, but I'm going to need a Sick Rad Scene sticker to go on the wall. Just make sure you're following them on Facebook as well as Instagram. And on that same note, Mabel Syndrome, I've mentioned them before. There's a Mabel Syndrome sticker right there. Support punk rock women. They are a group dedicated to women in punk rock. I've known a few of them for a couple years now. But I met more of them that were from other parts of the country while at Punk Rock Bowling, and they are all very, very nice people, very fun to hang out with. They support a great cause. Their group does great things when it comes to women in punk rock. And if you want to get a T-shirt, you can actually pick up a Mabel Syndrome T-shirt through Chaos Merch. Gabby has them now at Chaos Merch. You know what? I'm going to save this. I'm going to save that because we are running short on time. Interrupters, I just want to talk about them real quick. Saw Interrupters 3 times over the course of 8 days. Of course, saw them at Punk Rock Bowling, which we will talk about that full day when we get to that day of Punk Rock Bowling as far as our Punk Rock Bowling recaps. But then also got to see them in Los Angeles and Orange County. My wife, who doesn't go to a lot of shows, but she does love Interrupters, she actually came to the Friday show. They put out a great shows both. I mean, Punk Rock Bowling is one thing, but if you know festivals, these are shorter sets. They played a much longer set for their headline shows there in LA and Orange County. In fact, Hepcat was supporting them, played right before them. Saw Hepcat 3 times in 7 days because they played a different day at Punk Rock Bowling. Hepcat killed it, of course, as always. Can't say enough about the energy that the Interrupters bring to the stage. This is probably partly why my back hurts. My calves were killing me after last weekend, and I could tell it was from dancing and jumping around and just having a great time. And a quick shout out to Left Alone, one of my absolute favorite bands. Elvis Cortez is the man. Jimmy, Pablo, all those guys do such a great job. They actually opened the show on Friday here in Los Angeles. And I don't want to get into the details of it. Maybe we will one day. But Elvis and I had a little back and forth for a couple years. And that's specifically why I'm wearing this hoodie. Kept asking for Left Alone hoodies. And it was continuing. It continued into Vegas. And it was an inside joke back and forth. And even a couple other friends were getting into it and going by and saying, "Hey, Elvis, you got any of those Left Alone hoodies?" And I walked into the venue this past, or a week ago Friday. And my wife must have thought I was insane because we're walking in, meeting up with friends. And I was like, "Oh, let's pass by the merch. It's kind of on the way." So I look up, and there is a Left Alone hoodie hanging on the merch cage thing. And I just started laughing. I even texted Rachel of the Rachel Rama Punk Show. I said, yes, the Rachel O Rama. We emphasize Rachel Rama Punk Show because she was in on the joke. And I finally got my hands on one of these hoodies, and that's why I am wearing my Left Alone hoodie here in the studio for episode 107 of Common Sense Sundays. All right, let's do a quick recap of Friday at Punk Rock Bowling. This is a lighter day, so despite the fact that we only got a couple minutes left here, I can get through this one quickly. Found myself in Vegas Friday afternoon. Rode out there with my sis Laura. Made great time, too. We didn't hit a little bit of traffic, but not much. Although I'll tell you, when you're driving a 15, they're doing some construction right there at the strip. And it's like, you know when you're driving on a road trip and you're just like, we're so close. We just want to go right there. That was us for the last, 15 minutes. But we get to the hotel. Great service there. And you see all of the punks hanging around. Met up with a couple of our friends. Had a couple drinks as you do. Headed over to the Hogs and Heifers Saloon right across the street from our hotel. Of course, had to go say hi to Rob and Tina of Punk Rock Saves Lives. Then it was off to the Punk Rock Museum there in Las Vegas. We had gotten tickets. And the funny thing is we had gotten tickets, but they were at capacity. So we ended up standing in line. Our tickets were for $6:20. We don't get in until 7:15. And it's funny because people in line were getting irritated. And I'm just kind of like, we're in Vegas. We're hanging out with a bunch of punks here. Everyone's having fun. We're having fun in line, talking. Other friends that we know well are there. We're making new friends. So we get in. It's like, all right, let's check out the museum. And at one point, I'm walking around, and I see a line of guys in Hawaiian shirts come walking down the hall. And I go, that looks like me first. Me first decided to set up in They have Jim Lindbergh's garage from Pennywise, where Pennywise used to rehearse in the Punk Rock Museum. So here's Me First and the Gimme Gimmes. They set up in that garage and they play 5 songs just out of nowhere. And we're like 10 feet from it and like, holy shit, this is not something you see every day. So that was quite the treat. Then, of course, after that, a couple of us, my sis included, headed over to the Venomous Pinks Club show. They put on a fantastic show. It wasn't my favorite club venue, but the Pinks killed it as always. Actually, we saw them twice that weekend. I will talk about that when we do the next Punk Rock Bowling review. And then, of course, we had to run straight from there. Got some pizza. Or no, we got some pizza before that. I highly recommend Pizza Rocks there in Vegas, just off Fremont Street, right next to Downtown Grand and Hogs and Heifer Saloon. So we had that. Then went to see Pinks. Had to run from Pinks. Didn't even stay for that whole club show. Back to Hogs and Heifer Saloon, where one of my absolute favorite bands, Chaser, was playing that night. They, of course, put on a fantastic show. Ran into a bunch of friends we hadn't seen yet on that particular Friday. And shout out to Mike Ladon, good friend of mine. I mean, all of them are good friends, but a special shout out to Mike, who they've been recording. And that week, the week leading up to that, Mike was recording vocals in the studio for the new album. His voice was shot. And I could tell when I talked to him before he even got on the stage, I was like, oh boy, Mike, how's this going to go? Still put on a fantastic show. Crowd was fantastic. Helped him with a little bit of singing and singing along there. And it was just exhausting, but a fantastic night. And I should say, shout out to Jesse too, because I'm walking out of there and, you know, it's so warm and dry in Vegas. And I'd had a few beers. And I wasn't like even drunk or buzzed or anything, but I was more just thirsty and dry. And I'm like, all right, let's go back to the hotel across the street so I can get some water. And Jesse from Chaser goes, you need some water? Let me give you some water. Hands me a bottle of fancy water, too. I don't even remember what it's called, but it's like electrolyte water. Oh, saved my life. I was like, oh, this just got me another couple hours here. I'm good. Let's go. And I will say, I know we have a lot of burner listeners here, and I'll talk more about this, but I always joked. I was like, I feel like this is Burning Man for punks. And one real thing, and I'll talk more, probably each little recap here. Re-entry after Punk Rock Burning? Wow. Punk Rock Bowling, re-entry. Very similar to re-entry after Burning Man. Yes, you're not in the middle of nowhere at Punk Rock Bowling, but you were just surrounded by this fantastic community, and then you have to come back to, and I love Los Angeles, but then you got to come back to a bunch of other assholes that don't understand what you're doing and where, you know, what you were enjoying and all this other stuff. So re-entry, for my burner friends or burner/punk friends, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's a bitch. It really is. My patience, very, very short. I was like, please bring me back. I didn't want to be back in the heat and the dry, but I wanted to be back amongst people of the same like-mindedness. All right. We're definitely over time here, which is okay. Sometimes that happens. But we're going to wrap it up for this week. Before we do, make sure you are following us on the social platforms, facebook.com/GoTellItToTheWall, youtube.com/GoTellItToTheWall, or at GoTellItToTheWall. And, of course, my own personal Instagram account, which is at SoCalSean. And don't forget to bookmark SeanO'RourkeLive.com. And if you have the means to do so, please check out our Patreon and or our merch website, which are both featured there on SeanO'RourkeLive.com. As of now, we will be back next week, same wall place, same wall time, with episode 108. In the meantime, this has been episode 107 of Common Sense Sundays with Go Tell It to the Wall, hosted by me, your absolute favorite podcast host, the one and only Sean O'Rourke. And until next time, wall fans, common sensors, podcast consumers, remember, no matter what you do, no matter who you with, no matter where you going, especially no matter why you are doing it, always use common sense.